Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, we start off today looking here at a map that shows you the total precipitation ranks by climate district since the beginning of the year. It's a map I've shown you quite a bit, but let's just get an update here. We can still see that over in the Carolinas, especially along the coast, some of the numbers here are quite low, indicating a very, very wet start to this year. Notice, too, the changes that have happened in the northern plains, the Great Lakes states, and also look at the recent return of moisture here to the drought-stricken areas and parts of the high plains and also the central U.S. We're talking about the winter wheat belt right in through here. It's important for us to keep this kind of whole U.S. perspective on how things are shaken down here going into this next growing season. Now, the first thing I'd like to do after this is let's talk about some of the new long-range data that's going to come out here. And much of this is going to be kind of centered on what you see here. You notice that we still have a large area over here that is still quite cool. It is cooler than average in the Gulf of Alaska, and there's a cool tongue that does extend over toward Japan. Now, all of that, combined with the warm water that is still here in the North Central Pacific, if it were to stay in its current configuration, would spell quite a bit of heat for the midsection of the United States. But it is seasonably cooler than normal this time of year anyway. Now, if the heat is all backed up into the Midwestern part of the United States, what does that mean for us over in the Carolinas? Also, given that we still have quite a bit of warmth in the North Atlantic. One thing to take note of, this La Nina right in through here is fading fast. In fact, by some measures, it's technically in neutral territory. We've already seen a lot of warming of the waters just off the coast. Now, the reason why I start with this is because all long-range forecasts are going to have a heavy bias in them to what's going on here with ocean temperatures. That's just how they work. So let's go take a look at what the latest update looks like here. We're going to go to this website, one of my favorites. It's the IRI Multi-Model Forecasting Group. And what we're looking at first here is the probability for April, May, and June. So these are some new data that were released since our last video. April, May, and June precipitation probabilities. Okay, so you can see down here at the bottom, below normal colors are here, chances of being above normal are there. We start to see, notice the model's picking up on dryness in the west, dryness in the southern plains, pockets of drier weather throughout parts of the Midwest. Okay, so this is our spring pattern. We do not see at this point the model suggesting, below average precipitation for us in the Carolinas. Let's take a look at what it means for temperatures, though. Much of the United States here is favored to have above normal temperatures throughout this spring. Now let's jump from here and go all the way out to June, July, and August. And if we do that, we again see we're favoring above average temperatures. But what about that precipitation pattern? We see here that the model is favoring drier conditions in the Central Plains, backing up to the Pacific Northwest. And overall, we don't see a strong signal over here in the Carolinas. If we fast forward out to the start of the hurricane season, this is something I'm really starting to get concerned about. You can see the wetter conditions forecast for parts of the Gulf Coast and East Coast, suggesting that maybe the position of the Bermuda High, which is right here, could be stronger and push more of those systems later on this year over toward the coast. It's just an early season idea, but it is something that I'm going to be watching. I'm just going to be watching carefully as we move forward in this forecast. Okay. Now, with kind of the longer range update ideas out of the way early, let's talk about some things that just recently happened. For example, I want to thank Mark, a guy that follows me on Twitter. Mark F1962 is his Twitter handle. Sent in a great picture here of the equinox on the 20th. And it's a beautiful east-west facing road. And you can see the sun rising right there. Just a great image to show us that, hey, now the sun is in the northern hemisphere at noon. And as a result of that, we are going to have much steeper, much higher sun angles, longer days, and that's going to put some heat into the ground. We need to talk about that. Now, over the weekend, we were dealing with this pesky, weak cutoff coastal low that was sitting right in this area. And it did bring in, as you can see here, some cloud cover and quite a bit of wet weather for us in parts of the Carolinas, just adding to the wetter conditions that we had. But there's higher pressure that has been back to the west over the weekend. We're going to talk about how that's going to move over us to start this week here in a few moments. But first, let's just take a look at the latest satellite imagery. So if we go here, this was early this morning. The sun was rising. In fact, let me just show you. This is kind of neat. So here's yesterday on Sunday. You can see the coastal low still sitting and spinning in this direction. We get into into the overnight hours, and now this is infrared satellite imagery, there's that same coastal low, but in the overnight hours it does finally start to migrate a bit to the east, and as the sun was coming up this morning right there, much of North and South Carolina woke up to a sunny morning. But our next system is kind of waiting in the wings over here in the southern plains. We need to talk about where that one is going. First, quick diagnosis of the upper level winds. So this is the trough we're going to keep an eye on right here. There's a second kicker right on the back side that's going to cut into this one. But what I want you to notice here is you see this ridge that's over in place here over the east? That's going to help take the low pressure system we're going to watch out of the southern plains. Well, it's not going to move it straight east. It's going to take it up here to the Great Lakes. And we're going to get some showers out of this early in the week, but this is much different from a big bowling ball of a trough sweeping across the Carolinas. So with that, let's go right on over and look at what we're expecting over the next week. You do notice, I mean, just in general, from the Carolinas up to Virginia, we have a drier pattern for the next week. This does not mean no rain, but it means a drier pattern overall. Again, what we've got is a bit of split flow, so there's a polar branch of the jet stream there, a subtropical branch coming in here. They're going to initiate a system right over the Panhandles today that's going to go in this direction. That's system number one. There's a second low that's going to be right here that'll dig down underneath it, and then it'll cut up right here through my home state of Illinois. See, the trajectory of these next two lows is like this, rather than bringing them straight over toward the Carolinas. And as a result, we're very wet down in the the lower Mississippi River Valley. We're wet in the Midwest and even bringing in some moisture to the drought-stricken areas in the Western Corn Belt. Keep an eye on that, especially you corn and soybean farmers in the Carolinas. So let's watch the precip come in here. This is the high-resolution European model. I'm walking you through the beginning of the week, so this is getting through Tuesday evening into early Wednesday morning. We're going to watch for some showers and possibly some storms at that point. But notice much of the action's in the Midwestern part of the United States in the southern plains. Our next chance at seeing some precip doesn't come in. Look at this. This is now 1 a.m. Friday. This is now getting into Friday morning, afternoon, and evening. So we're going to have to watch out at that time for our next chance at some showers and storms to come through here. But it may not be really, until possibly Sunday. Look at this. I'm just kind of rocking back and forth late Saturday through the day on Sunday that we have our next chance. So we have 3 chances at rainfall, but it's nowhere near what we can typically get for this time of year. So take a good snapshot of this because the all hazards weather map is up next. And where that low is emerging today, well, we have the red flag warnings down here. We've got the high wind advisories there and the snow in the mountains. But as I said, this system goes like this. So over in the Carolinas, it is nice to see a map that is just covered with white counties here indicating no hazardous weather that's on tap for us to start this week. Where's the severe weather? Red River Valley today, okay? You see that it then translates a little bit farther to the east tomorrow on Tuesday. And then even by the time we get out here to Wednesday, the 24th, we're waiting on the next system to dive down and then take off like this. So that's why we don't bring that severe weather threat over here to the Carolinas throughout the early part of this week. So what's coming in is rain. Not much, but let's go take a look at the timing on it, all right? High resolution NAM model. So that high pressure cell that was over the Midwest, look, it's over us now. By the time we get to 3 o'clock this afternoon, that little coastal low just stays just off the coast. It's right there. But now you see the big system kind of spinning up in the Midwest. This is getting through early morning on Tuesday, afternoon on Tuesday, evening on Tuesday, early morning on Wednesday. So we're going to have to watch Tuesday night, see it there, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning for our next chance at some showers moving through the area. Not widespread coverage here, so this will be kind of hit or miss, and this is not much rain, but that's system number 1. System number 2 is then digging down right in through this area, and let's take a look at where that one's going to go here. First, winds. I would like to show you that overall, while we could get some gusty winds today along the coast, maybe some wind gusts there over 30 miles an hour, we do not have to endure the strong winds here in the Carolinas that the midsection of the country is going to be dealing with through Wednesday. We'll have to wait until the next system comes through to increase our chances for some stronger winds. Well, when is that? Let me take you back to the beginning of this run here. I was just looking at it. And let's see what we're going to be talking about. We've already seen that system spread the showers over us on Wednesday. So there it is from the European model. So how does that translate later on the week? Well, this is now 7 a.m. Thursday. We're getting through the day on Thursday into Thursday overnight hours, now into Friday morning, Friday afternoon. Now at that point, that next low curls up here into the Great Lake Basin and it drags a front through us. We're going to watch out for showers and storms then. As the weekend then carries on, what you just notice is there'll be a lingering frontal boundary stretched right in through here. And therefore, into the weekend, we do have a chance at seeing some scattered showers and maybe some thunderstorms. It's a relatively weak chance, but this is 7 p.m. on Sunday, just to give you an idea here. Okay, putting it all together again, you notice that the precipitation amounts, just kind of look over here in the Carolinas through the next week. We're generally in this range of less than 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. See the colors here lining up with this side of the color bar. All the really wet weather's down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley and with the systems curling into the Midwest. Okay? From there, week 2. Now this is where things are getting quite interesting. You see, the week 2 precipitation patterns are drier for us again. Drier. They're wet down here in the southern plains. But notice much of the rest of the country is showing up wet. And it's not just in the GFS model. I mean, it's also there in the European as well. Notice, that's a drier look for week 2. So we step back and we ask, well, why are we going to go from what has been quite wet over into this drier pattern? And I'd like to show you one way by which we're trying to examine that. Now, this is an interesting figure to look at, but it's showing you the vertical and zonal integral. So, we're adding it all up here, of total atmospheric angular momentum. Now, let me help translate this. You can see that from all the way back to the beginning of January, I'll just draw a line through it. See these warmer colors here? That represents in the mid-latitudes, you notice you're between about 40 and 60 degrees north here, that in that area we've had strong jet stream winds. The subtropical jet stream had been relatively weak. That's the bluer colors you see right in through here. Now, this was our last big surge of La Nina. That would actually be the top of the Walker cell over the equatorial Pacific. But I want you to look right here. You notice that in the most recent days, which I'll circle, we've backed off on the momentum of the jet stream. Now, if you do that, that just weakens the overall flow. So what do we have? Getting out there into week 2 by day 10, there is still some sense of a subtropical jet stream here. And it's coming up, just like this. We're split flow in the west, but overall, this is not the super high wind speeds in the jet stream that we would need to get to make things very active across the eastern half of the country. And then even going out there to day 15, if you just look at this, this is overall relatively weak flow across much of North America. The strongest winds are out here into the Atlantic, and they're still over in the Pacific. And you look at all of that, and it just says, well, you got that kind of flow, and there's no reason for the models to be aggressive on weather systems or on precipitation. That is the main takeaway point from looking at these maps. All right, what about temperatures? Now, throughout much of the Carolinas here, the start of the month of March, we've had some warmer days, but we've also had several below normal days. And when you add them all up and divide by the total number, you get near average. But we know we've had some cooler weather with some of this wetter weather we've been seeing. All the warmth has been back to the west, as you can see here, up into the Canadian prairie. Now, thinking about that, where do we currently stand on the accumulation of GDUs? This goes from February 25th up until the start of this past weekend. And we're in general sitting at just a very slight anomaly here. In other words, the slight warm bias has been negated by some of those cooler days that we have experienced. Now, where's the pattern going? Well, to show you that, I want to take you up to the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Let's look at some troughs and ridges. So we can see the ridge that's in place early this week along the East Coast. And then you've got those two systems digging down here. So we're mild, okay? But what you're going to notice is that as we get in through Wednesday, now into Thursday and toward the end of the week and weekend, the pattern begins to shift a little bit. See the trough coming through the Great Lakes? That shoves the ridge out to the open ocean. But what I want you to watch next is what's north of there. Watch the transition, and this is a really cool pattern change. Ready? The transition in the North Atlantic to this trough, going from here back over to the Arctic. Ready? So this is going to be the 28th, getting into the 29th. Now we're getting into the 31st and the beginning of April. And if you watch that, you saw that the trough moved back here. And as a consequence, we relaxed the pattern, opened it up, brought in more broad-scale warmth, and what you end up getting out of this is best seen right here. Take a look at these temperatures. Here's Monday's temperatures, departure from normal. Getting into Tuesday, we're still pretty close to average here. Getting into Wednesday, this is the mild start to our week. And then getting into Thursday, that's the warm day. And you say, why that being the warm day? Well, this is when that next system's pulling through the Midwest. We're in the warm sector of it. As we get into the weekend, Friday, another warm day. But Saturday and Sunday, we start to see those temperatures coming back more toward a climatological average. Now, what happens after that? Take a look at these soil temperatures first. Now, I'm going to take you back here. That line you see right here running across the image is the 50-degree line. We're going to spend much of the next week or so and beyond with above average soil, above 50-degree soil temperatures. There will be a shot at some cooler air though. Look at this, the variant of March. See that? Our early morning 4-inch soil temperatures could drop back down below 50 degrees. But then the recovery happens after we get into the first week of April. Ready? Here it goes. There we are on the 4th, 5th, 6th, and now we start to see much above average soil temperatures at the 4-inch level coming in. So day 5 through 10, we aren't carrying the really warm bias during that time period. Notice it's a couple of degrees above average. European model says the same thing. But what about out here day 10 through 15? This is when the warmth starts to regain position here. And what it ends up doing is it translates to the east once we get into that first full week of April. So what you've got here is we've got these near normal temperatures with shots at cooler air coming in. But take a look at this. As we get into April, the MJO avoided dipping down here into phases 3 and 4 and instead moves back over into phase 5 and 6. That's the forecast. You say, well, what does that mean? Well, that shows us that possibly from April 4th to the 11th, we could once again see a less active pattern. Okay, this would spell less frequent precipitation events. And take a look at the temperature pattern. It is showing up mild for us to start April. Now, if we could back off on the moisture and bring in the more mild conditions, this could make up from some of the early season wet weather and some of the deficits we've had with the heat units, the GDUs. So overall, I would call this a very favorable forecast for the Carolinas. And you saw at the beginning where this is all heading in the longer term. So we'll stop there with this forecast. I look forward to giving another update next week as we take an even farther look out into what this spring's going to hold. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.